Good morning, grade 10s. If you guys could please give me a green check mark in Blackboard just to let me know that you're ready to start and we're ready to get going on today's lesson, that would be fantastic. Just wanted to give you a heads up around today's lesson, you guys. It's probably actually going to turn into this week's topic. All right. I was sitting down working on it this weekend and I was like, oh, there's so much to cover for this topic. Perfect. So I see some green check marks coming in. Excellent work. So I just wanted to thank you guys again too for the great time at the college. That was a great experience, even for me. And it was good to see everybody out. That was nice as well. So looks like I've got everybody good to go here with the green check marks. So we are just going to get started. We've been talking about the concept of First Nations and First Nations identity and why we talk so much around culture and the First Nations culture and why we have to learn this and all those different concepts. And we looked at presently what is going on with the First Nations culture and how they kind of are in crisis right now in Canada. And now we're taking a look at the past to see why. Why have those issues built up over time to now, presently, they're facing these issues? So last class, we looked at residential schools being set up. And again, you guys, that's a huge topic. We just scratched the surface of that topic, all right? So residential schools was another underlying factor why there are social issues that are facing First Nations communities across Canada. And we're going to go back even further now. And now we're going to look at some treaties that occurred, all right, in our past that may have also been a factor, a contributing factor to where First Nations cultures and their identity is today as well. So that's what we're looking at, all right, are these treaties. And the lens that we're looking at through these is we're going to look at some critical thinking skills for you guys, whether or not these treaties were actually set up unfairly. And you guys are going to make some judgments around that. So here's our learning targets for today and probably a couple of lessons after that, all right? So basically, your first learning target, nice and simple. I want you to be able to explain or understand what a treaty is. Okay, that's essentially the background information that you guys need to have to understand the underlying issues, okay? The second is that you can understand the relationships between the First Nations and Europeans at the time that these treaties were taking place, okay? Do you understand that relationship? And then thirdly, this comes over from even our last topic on residential schools. Again, we're going to be taking a look at some primary and secondary sources, okay, to help us decipher that relationship between Europeans and First Nations, all right? So those are your three main learning targets for today. So here is the agenda. We actually might not get through everything today, you guys. We're going to try our best and just see. And you guys are the ones that are going to be in charge of the flow of today's lesson. Okay. So basically I want to start out with just some criteria, some context around what is fair bargaining and set up some criteria for that. Then we're going to have to look into some background to the treaties that we're going to be studying and analyzing. Then we'll actually take a look at the Douglas treaties and the numbered treaties. And then we'll do a quick reflection at the end as well. So here is how we're going to activate our knowledge for today. I want you to either give me a green check mark or a red X if you disagree or agree with the following statements. And I'll give a couple of seconds around each of these to make sure that you guys are good to go. Okay, so I'll just clear out the chat here. Good, or clear out the X's. Now, is it fair bargaining? Think around the concept of fair bargaining. So you and somebody else are trying to make a deal, right? So is it fair bargaining if you make the deal, but you know the object is worth more than the person is asking for it? Is that fair bargaining? Give me green check mark or red X, please. So is it fair for you to make a deal if you know that the object is actually worth more? Okay. So now I'm actually seeing a mixture of green check marks and red X's. So can you in the chat now, you guys, tell me why? Why would you either agree or disagree with that statement? And I'll actually bring up the chat here so you guys can see what everyone's talking about. Okay, so tell me why. Why would you what makes you say that?
Abby just called. You haven't turned chat on, so they can't ask you questions.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, you guys, for letting me know. This is probably all my all my private messages that I'm getting as well. Yes, that I didn't check before starting. Good. So now your chat is on, you guys. Thank you. Can you type into the room chat now? Interesting, Alex. I'm just reading out what Alex put in. Alex, can you put that into the room chat as well, what you just private messaged me? Perfect. Thank you. Because that's a good point. Right. So Taylor, what I think you're trying to get at is there is kind of that ethical dilemma, right? But Alex is looking at it more as an economic deal, right? If they're going to ask less, I'm getting a good deal. So why would I say anything? But Taylor's kind of saying, yeah, but there's that ethical side of things between fair bargaining, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So Taylor, you're kind of agreeing with Alex there, right? Excellent. Good. All right. So now, okay, finish up your thoughts if feel free. I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint, you guys, so I can see now my next question. All right. So now let's clear off the screen here. Okay. What about that second statement? Is it fair bargaining if you make the deal, but you know the object is worth a fortune and the person's asking a tiny amount for it? So does that make a difference now, Alex and Taylor? Good. So maybe it depends on the actual price of the product that you guys are buying or something like that, right? Good, Alex. And you bring up a great point as well. The whole legality of it as aspect. That's really important, right? So that can be extra. That can be another factor, another aspect that we didn't think about, right? Absolutely. So price might be a big factor when we're talking about fair bargaining and the worth of the object. That's really important. So is it fair bargaining if you make the deal, but you know the person is reluctantly selling the object because he needs the money? What about that? Would you agree with that? Is it fair bargaining if you know that they really don't want to sell what they're trying to sell you, but they need the money? Is that fair bargaining? And again, feel free to expand on your thoughts, you guys, into the chat if you want to explain yourself. That's true, Avery. True. If it's and again, that's certain circumstances, right? If a person is, in dire needs of money, that just might be the way it has to be, right? Yeah. So again, and it comes into, maybe it factors into what it is. So Abby, yeah, if we look at it, say, as a house, okay, absolutely. It might be fair because they might need that money, right? What about if it's a wedding ring or an heirloom to a family and you know that they're only selling it because they need the money, but you know that there's that sentimental value behind it? Yes. Oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it, Ava, right? You're looking at it, well, you're helping them out, right? Financially, you're helping them out. So maybe it's a win-win situation. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Good. So good, Belle. It's still their choice, right? Okay, so then there you go, Avery. That might be a way to look at it as well, that give and take, right? Excellent. Good, you guys. So if we head back, good. You never know, Alex. Yeah, they might head down the wrong path, right? If you end up doing it. And maybe if you don't do it, somebody else will, right? So it all depends. So is it fair bargaining then, ladies and gentlemen? Let's look at the next one. Is it fair bargaining if you make the deal, but you threaten the person with harm or mischief if they don't sell the object to you? Do you think that's fair? Good. I'm hoping that this one is pretty obvious to you guys. Good. I'm hoping that you guys all have that empathy within you that yes, you know, hurting someone physically or manipulating them is the not fair bargaining, right? Absolutely. Good. So we all agree on that statement. What about the next one? Is it fair bargaining if you make the deal, but you know that the person is a bit confused about the details because they don't speak English well? What about that one? What if there's a language barrier? Is that fair bargaining? Interesting. I'm seeing some green check marks. So if you agree that that's fair bargaining, tell me why in the chat. But Avery, could you expand on that? Because how, if there's a language barrier, how are you going to expand on that and try to convey the bargaining process to them if they don't speak English, right? Interesting. Okay. Get a translator. Okay, good. That's good, Taylor. That's a great solution. Yeah, absolutely, Abby. Yeah, Abby, absolutely. It all could depend on the scenario, right? Absolutely. You guys, I'm glad that you're starting to think about it. Good. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So is it fair bargaining if you make the deal, but you know that the person is totally confused about the most basic aspects of the deal, right? So what about, for example, just think about it this way. If the person that you're dealing with is really, really young and doesn't understand the value of money or what it means to actually sell something, is that a fair bargain? So for example, if I'm dealing with, say, like my daughter, and I try to sell her something, but I know she doesn't understand money, so I'm going to sell her something for 5 cents. Or for like $5, right? Because she doesn't have that concept. Is that fair bargaining? But Alex, I think what we're saying here is you would be exploiting that, right? Because you're making the deal, right? So I'm saying I am making that deal. right? And I know that there is that lack of knowledge. So I think you would agree with me that it's not fair bargaining, right? Exactly. You're taking advantage of them, right? I know. Avery, my kids think that, you know, the loonie is the greatest thing ever because it's gold, right? They think it's gold, Mom. So absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Ava. You can take that opportunity to actually talk about those factors as well. Yeah. Oh, Alex, you have no, you make me laugh. Now we all know we should never make a deal with Alex. All right, people, let's remember that. All right. So again, let's keep going. Is it a fair bargain if you make the deal, but you exaggerate slightly about the facts in an effort to negotiate a better price? Right? You can even take it back to Abby's example of a house situation, buying a house, right? What about if I slightly exaggerate, you know, that there's been no water damage to my house so I can get a better price for it? Is that fair? Yeah. So even that slight exaggeration about the facts, right? We can look at that as, looks like you guys pretty much agree, right? That's unfair, right? Oh, except for Alex. Alex agrees that all of this would be fair. Yeah, exactly. Good. I think you guys all are agreeing on that. Good. Okay. So let's go back. I think there was one more statement. Okay. Yeah, and again, Taylor, it might depend on the situation, right? You're right, Alex does make a good point. It should be up to the purchaser or the seller to get their facts straight as well, right? But at the same time, there's that ethical factor that we talk about all the time, right? So what about the last one, you guys? Is it fair bargaining if you make the deal, but you offer outright lies to trick the person? Okay, so, and then I give you an example there, right? So you lie when you say that an expert valued the object at $50 when the expert's actual valuation was, say, $300. Is that fair? Okay. Yeah, I think most of us agree with that one too, that it's clearly unfair. And it might even be illegal, right? Good. Excellent, you guys. So that is, keep that in the back of your mind, the process of fair bargaining. So we talked about a whole bunch of different situations, around what you guys think fair bargaining is. And you guys gave some great answers. And some of you were torn, right, about what is. And we can see that most of you guys actually are on a spectrum as well, right? Alex believes that everything is up for grabs, right? Versus someone on the other end that, you know, no, both parties need to be educated. It needs to be fair on both ends. Okay. So you need to keep that in mind when we start actually thinking about the relationship between Europeans and First Nations during the time that these treaties were signed. Okay. So here's what I want to kind of assume for you guys. Now, this is the criteria that was come up with for this assignment in particular. And I'm going to get you guys to take a look at it and we're going to do a little partner talk around it. Okay. Could we assume that the following could be used to consider fair negotiations? What are fair negotiations? Okay. So there's 4 kind of main criteria around what fair negotiations would look like. So there's that free authorized consent. So negotiations are fair only if one party is not pressured by the other party to make a deal. And both parties have authority to enter into the agreement. Okay. So they are both consenting into this agreement. Okay. Secondly, there's reasonable value under the circumstances. So although one side may benefit more than the other, especially if one party is desperate to sell, we talked around that scenario, the value of the exchange must not be hugely lopsided and favor one of the parties, okay? Another criteria is that fundamental understanding. Negotiations have to be understood. The terms of the agreement, all of that have to be understood between both parties, okay? And you have to make a sincere attempt to clarify confusion. That's another criteria. And then lastly, there's no significant intentional deception. Those were those last two concepts that we talked about there. So it needs, when one party is intentionally trying to deceive, right? That needs to not happen. Now, think about those 4 statements. And then what I'd like to do in Blackboard, in private chat, let's have a discussion around that criteria. Would you agree with it? Would you modify it? Or would you change it completely? Would there be something that you need to add? Okay? So let's take 5 minutes with a partner to discuss in private chat, and then we'll share out to the class. So really quickly, let's partner up. So can we have Abby and Alex go together, Anna and Anthony, Ava and Avery, Belle and Haley. Actually, let's go. Yeah, Belle and Haley, and then let's go Shayna and Taylor, and Taylor and myself. We will chat around that. All right. So go ahead, you guys. Let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll share out to the class. And I will go back a screen here and put that criteria up so you guys can see. So go ahead and get started there, ladies and gentlemen. Good. I can still see the chat going, you guys, so feel free. Finish up what you were talking about. Absolutely. So I'll give you a few more minutes here, you guys, just to finish up. Good. Thanks, Taylor. Good. So, ladies and gentlemen, now that now that you've chatted a little bit with your partner, and sorry, Taylor, we didn't really get to chat. You just told me what you thought. What I'd like you guys to do is now just let's have a quick share out to the class. Okay. What was, did you agree? Did you want to modify something? That sort of thing to the criteria. So now just choose one thing that maybe you chatted with your partner and bring it up into the room chat so that we can see what everyone else was talking about. Okay. So maybe I'll give you guys about 3 minutes to type that into the room chat, and then we'll come back and start a discussion around the criteria, whether or not that's what we're going to use or if we're going to modify it. Okay. So about 3 more minutes, you guys, to type into the room chat. Sorry, busy typing to you guys and chatting with you. Good. It sounds like everyone pretty much agrees with this, okay? And it seems like it's a pretty fair deal for both buyer and seller, or the two parties involved, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So good, you guys. Yeah, absolutely, Alex. I think it's a long process, and but I think if you, I do believe that you're right, it's going to be a very slow shift, but I think the shift is happening. It just is happening very, very slowly. So it will take generations and generations for it to happen. Absolutely. But you're right, Abby. Yep, it is. It starts with us and us as individuals, right? For that shift to occur. Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, fantastic around that idea of fair negotiations. So now when we think about that, okay, we need to think about, we did that. So now let's talk about, we now have the idea of fair negotiations in our brain. Now we need to put it into the context of treaty negotiations, okay? That relationship that happened between Europeans and First Nations communities when Canada was being settled, okay? So that's the context, that's the lens that you guys need to think about. You need to keep the fair negotiation criteria in the back of your brain as you read through the documents and through the history, all right? So this is what we're gonna do. In the Moodle course, you guys, in the assignment Unfair Treaties, there is a download button, okay, for a Venn diagram. So once you downloaded that, you can either print it out. It is PDF format. So either print it out or if need be, we are not handing this in. So feel free to actually just free form hand it on a piece of paper. It's totally up to you guys. It's just a strategy for you guys to use while you're reading through the text that I'm going to be getting you to read about. So using the links in this assignment, I want you to fill out that Venn diagram. Okay, there's two links that you need to be looking at. It's the history behind the two separate treaties that we're going to be looking at. So I want you to read about the Douglas treaties, and I want you to read about the numbered treaties. And I want you to think about this question right here. What are the similarities and the differences between the two agreements from a historical context? Okay, so now remember how a Venn diagram works. You've got your two circles and they're interlapped, right? So on the outside of the circles are your differences, and then on the inside where they overlap is where your similarities are going. Okay? Yes, Alex, it is a double socials block today. So I'd like to give you guys probably at least 20 minutes to go through those readings and do your Venn diagrams. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss the history around the two treaties. All right? So take 20 minutes and figure out the Venn diagram. Okay? Go ahead and get started, you guys. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you've gotten a good understanding of the two documents that I gave you to read, and you found some similarities and differences. So what I'd like to do is in the room chat, let's do this first. Let's back it up a second. Did everyone get a chance to read both documents and get some stuff down into their Venn diagram? Give me a green check mark in Blackboard if you got some. Taylor, you're reading the wrong documents then. It should have been the first two links. Okay? Each document was only about a page and a half, and it talked about the history behind the Douglas treaties and the history behind the numbered treaties. Okay, Taylor, I have a sneaky suspicion you got the wrong link and you went to the second aspect of what we're going to do next when we're analyzing the documents. Okay? Taylor. So, just to clarify you guys then, because obviously, when we bring this up, okay, here's the assignment, you guys. This is where you should have gotten your Venn diagram, okay? And then this right here, the background to the Douglas treaties and the background to the numbered treaties, okay? That's what you should have been reading. And then I also included a glossary of terms. If you didn't understand some of the terminology within the documents, feel free to review that as well. Yes, the one below that, Taylor, is what we're moving on to next. What we're going to analyze. Those are those primary and secondary sources. So that's all right, Taylor. That's not a big deal. I would like you, once we get back into work time, to go back and review those though, because that will help you set the context of the Douglas treaties and the numbered treaties. Okay. So really quickly then into the room chat, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Could we just type in one similarity and one difference that we found between those of you that were able to read the documents? Aha. Yeah, Taylor, you don't have to read that whole thing. So let's take 2 minutes and you're probably like, oh man, Miss Ward, she's only giving us 20 minutes to read these documents. Jeez. She's tough today. So it looks like some of you found there were a lot of similarities. Good, Abby, right? There were a lot of similarities, exactly, except for the places, the location, and for the time periods, right? Different time periods that it happened. They were very close, but didn't happen in the same time periods. And the places were the same, absolutely. So where did the Douglas treaties take place? If someone just wants to type it into the chat. Good. Great, Abby. Yeah, huge similarity, right? So there was an economic factor that played into the treaties. Absolutely. That was one of the factors. Alex, it surprises me that you say that. Just from our discussion earlier. Absolutely, yes. So, I'm hoping that those two documents, absolutely, yep, good, Ava, yeah, there's still a lot of confusion, right? That was a similarity. The First Nations communities, the Aboriginal communities, there was a lot of confusion around what were the treaties. They had a different idea about the agreements that they were agreeing to versus what the HBC and Douglas or the government were trying to enforce. Right? Right. They didn't believe that they were giving up their land. Really, they thought that they were renting it, right? That they were going to get a yearly profit from the HBC. Okay. Oh yeah, Alex, absolutely. They did get a good deal. Yeah, they didn't know what they were signing. And you can see even in the background as well, you guys, I think it was mentioned in the Douglas Treaties, the background of the Douglas Treaties, that there was a language barrier, right? And just like you mentioned as well, bringing up interpreters or something, if you didn't understand the language, that's exactly what they did. Okay. So yeah, absolutely, Ava. Yeah, they almost thought it was like a rental agreement. Okay, good. So now this is where we are heading, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So where we are heading next is the following. Now, okay. Interesting question, Abby. Interesting question. Why wouldn't they? But why would they? That's actually the more pertinent question, is why would they? If they didn't have to, right? They don't understand what's going on. Well, Alex, that might actually come later on. Because that actually did happen as well, right? Once the Europeans started trading with the First Nations, right? Through the HBC, what disease was introduced? Do you guys know? Has anyone heard of that disease that killed off hundreds of thousands of Aboriginals? Absolutely, Taylor, that's right. Smallpox was introduced and the Aboriginals had no immunity to that. So the trading through blankets, that was the big one, right? And so, yeah, the First Nations communities took a hard hit once that relationship was established with Europeans. Okay? Okay? Yeah, Ava, great question. I'm just going back and scrolling through there. Ava, actually, history would have probably been rewritten, don't you think, Ava? What if they hadn't agreed to the treaties? We would have that, we have no idea, right? History probably would have been rewritten. What do you think? Maybe war? I don't know. Like I said, none of us are experts. We're all just, absolutely, Abby, we wouldn't be living in Canada as we know it today, right? Yeah, so Alex, then that ties back into that unfair bargaining, right? Unfair negotiations, because now we're taking it by force and we've already established that that's unfair. Yeah, okay, so that's huge. Good, you guys. So now what we're going to do, and what Taylor's already half done, is I'm going to assign you a set of documents, okay? Taylor, I love that question. I love it. Because remember too, you guys, history, I don't know if you guys have heard this term, but history is written by the winners, right? Whoever wins is who writes history. So that's the perspective, that's the historical perspective that we have the lens of who has written the history, right? That's the real focus of why we look at primary and secondary documents as well, right? Because that is how history is written by the winners. So imagine if the Aboriginals didn't sign the treaties. Would our history would have been written differently? Would we even be living in Canada? Those are big questions. Yep, absolutely. So it's not so much about how long ago it was, Taylor, but it's who wrote it. And that's the whole reason why we like to look at the primary sources, right? Because those are real documents that have come from that time period. And that's where we extract that evidence, that knowledge from those documents to help us understand what happened back then, right? Yeah, absolutely, Abby. I don't think I actually even went into that, those definitions, but primary sources are sources that can be linked straight to the events that occurred. So primary documents are such things as maps during that time, or photographs, or the actual written treaties. Those would be primary sources or primary documents, versus secondary documents that are like one step removed from that. So it could be a historian writing about that time period. That would be a secondary source. Okay? Does that make sense, Abby? What the difference is between primary and secondary sources? And I think because you did miss last class, you'll get a better sense today, because we're going to be looking at specifically primary sources today. Okay? So now what we want to do is, now that we have a little bit of knowledge around the treaties, when they occurred, where they occurred, who was kind of involved, why maybe we can start to see why maybe they were unfair, if that's how we want to perceive them. Now we want to actually look at the documents that made up those treaties. Okay? So we are going to actually apply the knowledge. So in the assignment, you guys, you will see that little chart. Now, I think there's only, how many of us are in class today? So there's only about 12 of us in class today, you guys. So what I'd like to do is this. Yeah, Taylor, which one were you reading? Were you reading the numbered or the Douglas? Just so I know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign you guys a specific set of documents to read. Okay, thanks, Taylor. And then what you're going to do is you're going to follow the correct link to your set of documents. Now, there's two links, because one is numbered treaties and one is Douglas treaties. Now, you want to make sure, but all the Douglas treaties and all the numbered treaties documents are in the same link. So you need to make sure that you're going to your specific numbered one. Okay, that's what you want to make sure. So you don't want to read all 13. You're only going to be reading 4 documents, okay? And when I say documents, you guys, they're not huge, okay? So you want to make sure that you're following the correct link. Now, what I want to do is I want to give you a bit of a strategy to help you read the documents. So there's a download button in the assignment, you guys, around reading around a document. So if I just bring up the course, you guys, because I want to show you specifically. This is the worksheet, the first download. This is the reading your document. Now, when I download this, okay, what you'll see here is this is going to help you to get a context for when you're reading. We're not going to start actually analyzing quite yet. This is kind of like the surface analysis of when we read our documents. Now, you can do this 2 ways. You can actually do this worksheet 4 times because you're going to have 4 documents to read. Or if you want to make it easier, I was thinking you guys could just split each of these boxes also into 4s if you wanted. Or you can do this 4 separate times. Again, you are not handing this in. This is helping you. This is a strategy to help you to start to surface read these documents, okay? So this is to help you. Now, this is the first column here is your response. What do you think about the document? And then this one is your why do you think that? It's the specific evidence from the document, whether it's a specific quote or an event, whatever it is. Okay? That's really important. Then it's divided, as you can see, you guys, into some separate types. And we've kind of looked at this before, right? When we looked at our primary sources from last class around residential schools, right? Getting into that mindset of the author, right? So who is the author of that document or report? Okay? Who's the audience? Who are they trying to write this document for? Okay? What is the context? What is the situation that's going on while this document's being recorded? Okay. And those history links that I just had you guys read, or those history texts, that will help you. Because what else is happening during that time? Okay. What type of document is it? Okay. Is it a diary? Is it an actual document? Is it a legal document? Is it a personal letter? That helps you as well to read into the text. Okay. What is the purpose? Who are they trying to convince or whatever? Okay. Why is this document being written? And then the credibility. Okay. So think about whether this is reliable or not. Okay. That's really, and that comes into a bias, right? Does somebody have a bias? So this will help you really read around your documents. Okay. That's where I'm going to start with you guys. Okay. So when we look at this chart, this is how we are going to split up. Okay. Now you're not going to read the whole thing, but when we come back as a group, everyone's going to share the information around their documents, and that will help us understand the whole big picture. All right. So I'm just going to start from the top of the list, and I'm going to assign you who's doing which. Okay. So Abby, sorry, I'm going to have to put up my computer screen, you guys, just because I need to see names. So Abby, if you could do numbered treaties, documents 1 to 4, that'd be great. Alex, if you could do the documents 5 through 7, okay, on the numbered treaties. Anthony, if you could do 8 to 11 on numbered treaties. Ava, you're going to do 12 to 16, okay? And then Belle, I just did Avery, right? Okay, so Belle, you're going to do 1 to 4. If I miss your name, please let me know. Okay. Belle, you're going to do 1 to 4 on the Douglas treaties. Damon, you're going to do 5 through 8 on the Douglas treaties. Haley, you're going to do 9 to 11 on the Douglas treaties. Thank you, ladies. Right there. So Anna, you're now going to do 9 to 11 on the Douglas. And Avery, you're going to do 12 to 16. Okay. Shayna, we're going to go back right to the beginning. You're going to do 1 to 4 on the numbered treaties. Taylor, 5 to 7. Oh, you know what? Taylor, you're going to do 1 to 4 on the Douglas because you already read those. And Taylor, you did Douglas as well, right? So you do 5 to 8 as well. Okay, Taylor? Since you've already read them. All right. So now's the time where I want you to you'll see the links. Make sure you go to the correct links. Okay. Which one I assigned you to. And then what I want you to do, okay, is read your documents and use this worksheet to help you just surface read those documents. Okay. So you can either use 4 of these to help you, or just split each box into 4 and take your own notes around that. Totally up to you guys how you do this. Again, like I said, you're not handing this in. This isn't this is just a strategy to help you read around the documents. All right. So, Taylor, yes, 5 to 8 on the Douglas treaties. Yeah. So now's the time, you guys. Again, I'm going to give you, I'm going to say maybe half an hour to do this one. Okay. Cause I really want you to think about that. So I'm going to give you half an hour. Like I said, if you need to go back to the history of the Douglas treaties and the numbered treaties, go ahead. That will give me time to set up the last part of the assignment for the day. All right. So go ahead, you guys, you got half an hour. And actually what I'm going to do is during this half hour, you guys, I'm going to head back to my office and we'll finish out the rest of the class just on Blackboard. All right. Because now's the time where I need to use the whiteboard and stuff. And it's just easier that way. Okay. So half an hour, we'll reconvene back in Blackboard. All right. Bye, guys.